Hello guys, Robot1 here coming at you with another hand testing video, and obviously in today's hand testing / combo video we're going to be doing the PK adventure list that I showcased to you guys the other day that was able to top my locals with it. And seeing as this deck is actually really good and has a lot of different combo routes / ways that it can go depending on your opening hand, obviously we're going to be doing a hand testing video to show you guys what this deck is capable of, just so you guys can see the different routes, the different combos, the kind of choices you have to go through. Because when you're not playing DPE or Scythe, it really is kind of like difficult to figure out what kind of line of play you want to go down, what you want to do exactly with the deck in general. And this is just the kind of video to just show you guys what the deck is capable of, and then give you guys ideas of the deck for yourself to see if you want to play it, pick it up. And seeing as this deck is quite expensive and stuff like that, then I would say definitely try this deck out for yourself online, try it out, see if you like it, see if it's your kind of thing before maybe investing in it, because the adventure package is currently sitting at like £300 for the whole core or something. So yeah, but let's go ahead and get into the actual hand testing now to go ahead and see what we can do with it and see how good the deck is in a hand testing environment, because we've shuffled it up, it's all random, and we want to see what we can get. So starting off, we've got the Water Enchantress of the Temple, very good card to open. Phantom Knights of Torn Scales, another good card to open as well, just allows us to go into a lot of combos. Phantom Knight Wings, not the best card to open, but it's definitely good discard fodder to revive more PKs. Griffin Rider, definitely not a card that we want to open, but it isn't the worst right now because we've got the Water Enchantress and we've also got it, so it means that we can go ahead and get additional level 3 extenders, and then a Phantom Knights of Silent Boots as well, which just means that we can guarantee us going off through different combos. So not the worst hand in existence. This hand is actually very strong and can do a lot of things, so let's go ahead and showcase what it's actually capable of. So starting off, we're going to go ahead and banish our Water Enchantress because she's the one who's going to allow us to get Rite of Omniscia from our deck to our hand. So we add the Rite of Omniscia to our hand, and then we're going to instantly activate it, allowing us to make the Brave token, which we'll place there, and also allowing us to place a Fateful Adventure from our deck into the Spell and Trap card zone. Just a very good card and a very good piece there as well. Like, this just gives you 2 cards for 1. It's a +1 inherently, which is really strong. So we go ahead and put that into the Spell and Trap card zone. We're then going to go ahead and use the Fateful Adventures effect, which will allow us to search our deck for an adventure card and then discard a card from our hand. Now, the card that we're actually going to search is going to be another Water Enchantress, because this is basically another level 3 extension, and seeing as we've already got the Griffin Rider in our opening hand, we don't need to add it from our deck to our hand to allow us to go into further combos / have the negation, so it's just a good card to add in general as well. So we go ahead and add this from our deck to our hand, then we have to discard a card, and we'll go ahead and discard the Wings because it's a dead card in our opening hand, and we would rather discard it to go ahead and have that free revive. That's literally why you play the Wings, just so you can go ahead and banish it to just go ahead and get that revive ability there. We're then going to go ahead and special the Griffin Rider, preventing all of our opponent's hand traps from now onwards, just saying that, oh yeah, you have a Nibiru, you have an Imponus, you have anything that you want to try and use to stop me. No, you're not going to stop me, this is going to stop you from stopping me. So we summon that, and then we go ahead and trigger the Fateful Adventure, which allows us to go ahead and add the Dragon Rider from our deck to our hand, because when a monster is summoned while you control a Brave token, then you can go ahead and add a quick equip spell from your deck to your hand. So we're going to go ahead and grab the Draco back from our deck to our hand, and we're going to put it in our hand. So yeah, pretty much that. You could also equip it to the Brave token as well if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend that because you would rather have it as discard fodder for your Phantom Knights of Torn Scales, which is just really good. So go ahead and add this to our hand, and then we're going to go ahead and start doing other things outside of the Brave engine. We're going to normal summon our Torn Scales, not being able to use this effect because we have used the adventure package this turn, and then we're going to go ahead and special summon the Silent Boots from our hand as well, giving us 2 level 3s on the board. We're then going to go ahead and link these two and make Cherubini of the Burning Abyss, and then we're going to go ahead and use Cherubini's effect, which will allow us to send a level 3 monster from our deck to our graveyard as cost, increasing its attack points as well. Monster we're going to actually go ahead and send to the graveyard is Graf Miller Branch of the Burning Abyss. Seeing as we already have access into the Torn Scales and the Boots, we don't need to go ahead and send like a cloak or anything to the graveyard. So we're going to send Graf to the grave so we can get that Seer from the deck as well. So we go ahead and then trigger the Graf, which will allow us to summon the Seer, wherever it is, right there. And we go ahead and summon that to a zone Cherubini points to. Go ahead and shuffle that up. We're then going to go ahead and special the Water Enchantress from our hand because we control the Brave token, and we're going to special it to our field in defense mode. What we're going to do after that is we're going to overlay these two, and we're going to go ahead and summon out Legionnaire the Sea Dragon. We're going to use Legionnaire the Sea Dragon's effect, detaching Seer Mellibranch of the Burning Abyss, and summoning back the Water Enchantress that is banished. We'll then trigger Seer Mellibranch of the Burning Abyss, which will allow us to summon the Graph, summoning it to Cherubini's zone. It's very important that you do not summon into Cherubini's zone, so you actually have the zone free, so you can summon back the Graph so it doesn't die on summon. Because Burning Abyss monsters do not stay on the board if there's any other monster that is not a Burning Abyss. So you have to make sure that you have this zone free so the Cherubini can protect it from its own effect. With what we're going to do after that is we're going to go ahead and use the Graph and the Cherubini, and we're going to go ahead and link them into our Torn Scales. Oh, sorry, not our Torn Scales, our Rusty Bardiche. We're then going to go ahead and use the Rusty Bardiche's effect to send a Phantom Knight from our deck to the graveyard. We'll go ahead and send a Ancient Cloak to the graveyard and set a, wherever it is, a Fog Blade from our deck. Essentially having that set up there. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and banish the wings from our graveyard. And we're going to go ahead and banish that, which will allow us to summon a Phantom Knight from our graveyard. The Phantom Knight that we're going to summon is going to be... Well, it's either... You could summon either or, but we're just going to summon the boots here. So we'll summon the boots in defense mode. We're then going to go ahead and overlay these two, which will allow us to go and summon out a second Legionnaire. Well, actually, no, we don't need to summon the Legionnaire right now, because we've already got the Rusty Bardiche out, and you normally just go into the second Legionnaire to give you access into the Rusty Bardiche, but because we've already got the Rusty Bardiche, we don't need to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to summon the Dante. Now, we're not going to use the Dante's effect because of milling cards here just seems irrelevant, because we've already got every Phantom Knight card that we actually want. So we won't use the Dante, but what we will do is we'll go ahead and overlay the Legionnaire and the Dante to go ahead and make our Utopic Future, just our Utopic Future. We're then going to go ahead and overlay with the Utopic Future, making our Utopic Future Draco, which is pretty much just, I'm an Omni Negate that snatch steals my opponent's monsters. The card is very, very strong, and is one of the reasons why I actually really love this deck, because you can make this card, and it just basically says, I am a big boss monster that is very, very hard to out, and I like to steal my opponent's cards, which also makes the deck even better for me. And one of the main reasons why I don't actually play the Scythe DPE package, because I think this card is superior to that package in general. But seeing as we've done that, we're not actually done, because we're going to go ahead and banish from our graveyard now the Ancient Cloak, which will allow us to add a Phantom Knight monster from our deck to our hand. Now, what we're going to go ahead and add from our deck to our hand is the Stained Greaves. And the reason we're adding the Stained Greaves from our deck to our hand is because we have already used the Phantom Knight's Boots that's in our graveyard, so we need to go ahead and have the ability to summon one more level 3 monster to just get that slightly more extension that we're going to actually go into on our turn. So we go ahead and get the Greaves, and then we're going to go ahead and trigger the effect of Torn Scales in our graveyard to special summon it in defense, and then trigger the Greaves effect to special summon it from our hand, keeping it at level 3. You do not turn it to level 4. What we do next is we're going to use the Torn Scales effect to go ahead and discard the Dracobat Rider to send one Phantom Knight card from our deck to the graveyard. The card we're going to send from our deck to the graveyard is going to be... It honestly doesn't matter, but we're just going to go ahead and send from our deck to the graveyard the Fog Blade, because we could send the Gloves to get additional banish and just also have that in the graveyard still, but we're just going to send this to the graveyard because it's all we really need to send right now, and it'll give us that additional disruption for our opponent's turn. So we go ahead and do that, sending that to the graveyard, and then we're going to go ahead and trigger Dracoback's effect, which is when it's sent to the graveyard, you get to go ahead and equip it to your adventure token. So we equip it to the adventure token, and we're not done yet, because what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and overlay these two monsters, summoning out a Breaksword, and that will go ahead and trigger our Rusty Bardiche's effect that says when a Dark Seas monster is summoned to a zone it points to, it destroys a card on the field. So we're going to go ahead and destroy the Breaksword that we just summoned, because it's going to actually allow us to summon two Phantom Knights back. So we're going to destroy these, and then we're going to trigger the Breaksword's effect, which will actually allow us to summon back the Torn Scale and the Greaves as well, and they come back as level 4 monsters. So what we're going to do next after that is we're going to overlay these two monsters, and we're going to go ahead and make Time Thief Redoer to have that additional disruptions of stealing from our opponent's extra deck, which I think is just really, really strong. And then that is pretty much the last thing we can do, but there is actually one more thing we can do right now as well, which is kind of optional. You don't have to do it, because it means that you don't have any of the ability to actually use the Rusty Bardiche anymore on your next turn, but we're going to do it anyway, and that is basically go ahead and banish your Silent Boots from the graveyard, to go ahead and add from your deck to your hand the last Fog Blade in your deck, giving you the last Fog Blade on the field face down to have that additional negate. Now, from the hand that we just had, we made a board that has not only 1, 2, 3, 4 negates, we also made a board that has the ability to destroy any card our opponent controls with the Rusty Bardage simply by banishing the Fogblade in our graveyard and summoning the Breaksword back. And we also got the Time Thief Redoer that could potentially steal a spell card, a monster card, or a trap card, giving us either another way to banish itself, which isn't the best, a way to draw cards, or a way to pretty much just say, yeah, I'm going to put a card from your field back on top of your deck. So pretty much with the hand that we got, and we've got no cards left in our hand or anything, we were able to make a very, very strong board here, and a board that essentially says, yeah, I don't care what you have because I'm just going to go ahead and disrupt your way the whole way through. And even though we don't have a lot of resources in our graveyard anymore, which is kind of upsetting from the board in general, we actually have a lot on board still regardless, because what you really got to think about with this board right now is that we've got a Time Thief Redoer that has a Stained Greaves and a Torn Scales under it, meaning that we can go ahead and put them in the graveyard at any point in time by simply just detaching one and banishing the Redoer and having them in the grave. And we've got 2 Fogblade sets, which as soon as one of them leaves the board, we then have more Monster Reborn effects to bring them back and just go ahead and make 2 level 3 monsters to go even further beyond from there as well. And the final thing that we actually have that can still be done on our opponent's turn is we can go ahead and detach the Dante to add back the Seer from our graveyard to then just go ahead and be able to, you know, Seer Dante loop so we never lose that game there. So not only is this board 4 negates, 1 Omni Negate, 3 Monster Negates, but this board is a potential compulse / draw. This board is a guaranteed pop. This board is literally a free recyclability engine, a free revivals. Like, this board is absolutely insane in my personal opinion, and this is just the first test hand, which I honestly can't believe we did so much with the first test hand. I didn't expect to get to this kind of board state with just 1 test hand, but yeah, this is one of the reasons why I just really enjoyed this deck and really think this is one of the best forms of the deck in general, because it can get so much advantage and so much resource from just this alone. So I really like this, but let's go ahead and go on to the next hand test, because even though we've still got a lot of options in the extra deck, which we still have Zeus, we still have a second Breaksword, Levianeer, Access Code Talker, Appaloosa, Nightmare Unicorn, I still want to do more test hands and show you guys just slightly different hands and hopefully, you know, unique hands, because I want to see different hands in general as well. So let's go ahead, pick all of this up and go into another test hand. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Put all of those back, the token over there, and we shall go on to the second test hand with a nice, neat shuffle here. So yeah. But yeah, so pretty much this deck, in my opinion, is just overall better than the version that plays DPE and Scythe, because you can just do boards like that have so much resource advantage and just have, oh yeah, I'm just going to negate all your stuff and have revives that... Is it really needed to go ahead and make DPE Scythe when I can just have a Snatch Steal monster, or I can have any of these other things, slash a pop, slash literally negates, Omni Negates? Like, I really think this is one of the better builds. Plus, this build is much more consistent because it doesn't end up drawing Dasher, Celestial, Scythe, any of these cards that really brick you. So I think the build in general is just a lot better because of that. So that's why I choose to play this build. But yeah, like, I might try the Scythe DPE build next week, I don't know, but this week I really do enjoy this build, and I think this is one of the best builds. So yeah, but that's a nice shuffle. Let's go ahead and go on to the second test hand and see what we get. So 5 cards, put it all together, and let's see what we have. So we have a Fogblade, a Torn Scale, a Stained Greaves, Reinforcements of the Army, and a Psychic Wielder. And you guys are probably thinking, huh, there's no Brave Engine in this hand. How are you going to make Brave? Well, I'm going to tell you right now. We have the Brave Engine in our hands, and I'm going to show you why. So let's go ahead and start off. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Reinforcements of the Army. So we're potentially trying to bait out an Ash Blossom or something along those lines so our opponent can't Ash us. But we go ahead and use Reinforcements of the Army, and we're going to go ahead and add from our deck to our hand a Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. So we add that from our deck to our hand. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and normal summon our Phantom Knights of Torn Scales, and then special summon our Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. We're then going to link these two, summoning out the Cherubini, and we're going to use the Cherubini's effect, which will allow us to go ahead and send a Water Enchantress from our deck to the graveyard. When it hits the grave, we're instantly just going to banish it from our graveyard to go ahead and add Rite of Armisia from our deck to our hand, and then we're going to activate it, allowing us to put the Brave token on the board, and also allowing us to put Fateful Adventure on our board once again, wherever it might be. So it's the final card. So we go ahead and add that from our deck to our field, and then we shuffle it up. We're then going to use Faithful Adventure, which will allow us to add the Griffin Rider from our deck to our hand, wherever it might be. So add that from our deck to our hand. And then we've got to send a card from our hand to the graveyard. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, we're probably going to send the Stained Greaves from our hand to the graveyard. But no, we're sending the Fogblade. We want the ability to go ahead and just have the fact of Revive in our graveyard, because I find that more important right now. So we go ahead and put that in the grave. And then we're going to go ahead and special summon the Griffin Rider as our 5th summon. So we do play around Nibiru by doing it this way as well. On the summon, though, we obviously trigger the Fateful Adventure, which will allow us to add the Draco back from our deck to our hand. And then we're just going to continue to go into a combo that should end on a very similar board to last time, but maybe not with the redoer because we didn't use the BA engine this time. So we go ahead and add that to our hand. We're then going to go ahead and banish the Fogblade from our graveyard, targeting the Silent Boots and summoning it in defense mode, and then triggering the Torn Scale, summoning the Torn Scale in defense. And the final thing that we're going to trigger in this combo is actually the Stained Greaves, because of a Phantom Knight was summoned, to go ahead and summon the Stained Greaves in defense. So pretty much right now we've got the Boots, the Torn Scale, and the Stained Greaves on the board, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the Torn Scale to discard the Draco back to go ahead and send a Phantom Knight cards from our deck to the graveyard. The card we're going to send from our deck to the graveyard will be a Phantom Knight's Wings, wherever it is, because we pretty much got access into everything we need, and we don't really need to get to a Ancient Cloak right now. Actually, do we want the Ancient Cloak instead? No, I think it's fine how we are right now. So yeah, we'll put the Wings in the graveyard for that additional revivability. So we go ahead and put that in the grave. Then we're going to go ahead and overlay these two, and we're going to go ahead and make Levianair the Sea Dragon. We'll use Levianair's effect, detaching the Silent Boots to summon back the Water Enchantress, which will allow us to put it in the graveyard, giving us another search for Rite of Armisia next turn if we do end up losing in this. Also, something I just missed, we should have put the Draco back onto the Adventure token as well, just so we'll put that there, just so that's a bit of correction, because we want to show you the best end board, and yes, you're keen to misplays at times. Like, honestly, this deck takes a lot of thought at times, and you got to make sure you're not making little misplays like that. But this would normally be on this, but just for the sake of the video, to show you guys that it should be there in the end board, we'll put it on even though I missed it. In tournament, you'd miss the trigger, it'd be too late, but for the sake of the video, we're going to show it anyway. But continuing on, so we go ahead and summon the Water Enchantress back, and then we're going to overlay these two, and we're going to summon the second Levianair the Sea Dragon. We're going to go ahead and use the Silent Boots that is in graveyard now, banishing it, to allow us to add from our deck to our hand a Phantom Knight spell or trap, and we'll add the Phantom Knights of Fogblade to our hand. And then we're going to use Levianair once again, detaching the Stained Greaves to summon back the Silent Boots. We're then going to go ahead and use the Cherubini and the Silent Boots, summoning out the Rusty Bardiche. And we'll go ahead and after that use the two Levianairs, overlaying them both into the Utopic Future and then the Future Draco. And then we'll use the Rusty Bardiche's effect, sending to graveyard literally any Phantom Knights cards. In this case, we're going to go ahead and send a Gloves because it gives us a lot more options for next turn, depending on what we want. And we're going to go ahead and set the Fogblade as well. So we'll go ahead and put the Fogblade face down on the field. And pretty much, if you wanted to do anything else in this board, you could go ahead and use the Wings that is currently in the graveyard, special summon the Wielder, then go into the Rusty Body, the Break Sword, sorry, and then go from there. But we'll go ahead and just do that regardless. So we'll banish the Wings, summoning out the Greaves. Then we'll go ahead and special summon the Wielder. Go ahead and overlay these two. Summon out the Break Sword. Rusty kills the Break Sword again, so destroying itself and triggering its ability. We'll go ahead and summon out the two Phantom Knight monsters that we can. We'll summon out these two. Actually, no, we'll summon out the Boots, seeing as we've already used it this turn. And then we go ahead and overlay them both. into a Time Thief Redoer, and then we go ahead and set the last Fog Blade that's in our hand, and then we have a board that is very similar to the last board we have. The only difference here is that we don't have a third Fog Blade in the graveyard because we had to use the Fog Blade plus the wings, so we can't get an instant revival of the Breaksword. But this board is very similar, where in the case that it has the Utopic Future Draco just with no Dante under it, so you can't go ahead and get a BA back to go ahead and seal loop. It has the Time Thief Redoer for the potential compulse. It has the Rusty Bardiche for when one of the Fog Blades go to the graveyard to go ahead and summon back the Breaksword to get that free pop, and it has the Omni Negate in the form of the Griffin as well. So yeah, this board is also a lot more resilient as well, because if this board is actually broken, we still have plays for next turn, seeing as we have the gloves in the graveyard, we have the Water Enchantress, we've got the Torn Scales to go ahead and have that free revivability. We've got a lot more options than we did in the first game, or in the first test hand compared to this one, for going second, or sorry, not going second, for the turn after, if our opponent does break our board. But this board is also just very strong. Like, this is the gold board of every single time I play this deck. Like, and you can make a lot of this even if you're disrupted most of the time, because if your opponent Ash is part of the combo, if your opponent Ghost Ogre is part of the combo, 9 times out of 10, you will still end on this, you just won't have this. So even if stuff like that does happen, it's fine, because this part of the board will always be the same, where you still have like the 2 Fog Blades, you still have the Redoer, you still have the Utopic Future, you still have the Rusty Bardiche, but it's just the Brave Engine that might be stopped that is kind of annoying, because it means that you can still be Nibiru'd, it means you can still be Ash Blossomed, it means you can still get hit by, well, spells and traps on your opponent's turn. Like, that's pretty much why I like the Brave Engine so much, because the Brave Engine just says that I'm an Omni Negate, I protect you from your spells and traps, so you have all your monster negates, but if you see that one spell card that could potentially make you lose the game, yeah, no, I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the deck and just stop you from doing that. But yeah, that is the second test hand. Let's go on to one more test hand to show off what the deck can do with the final hand, and then we will go on to the end of the video. So yeah, one more test hand, putting all the cards back, seeing what we get, and hopefully it will be just as good a hand. Like, don't get me wrong, if this time we see a brick hand, I'll be a bit surprised, because as I said, this deck is really consistent. You don't really have a lot of brick cards in the deck, but it is possible to see a hand of like Fateful Adventure, Rite of Armisia, Draco back, the Griffin Rider, just a lot of bricks that don't really help you in terms of just like the overall strategy of the game. So it can happen, but we're not looking for those kind of hands here. We're just looking for combo hands, or maybe a bad hand that could still turn into a playable hand. So let's go ahead, finishing shuffling this up. 1, 2, 3, and see what we get for the last test hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see what we have. So, well, we started Fateful Adventure, so this is one of the things that I said, you could open this card and it is kind of a brick, but nonetheless we can still use it for different players. Ash Blossom, first time we've seen that, I'm playing 2, so it makes sense. Ancient Cloak, not a bad draw. Boots, so we've got full combo, and then a Fog Blade, so we've got pretty much everything we could possibly want. So this is how we're actually going to play this hand. We're going to go ahead and play this hand in a way that I think is correct, and we're going to see the kind of board that we can end on. So what we're going to go ahead and do for starters is we're going to go ahead and normal summon the Ancient Cloak. We're then going to go ahead and special summon the Silent Boots from our hand, which will allow us to just have 2 level 3s to make the Cherubini. We summon out the Cherubini, then use Cherubini's effect, which will allow us to send 1 monster, well, level 3 monster from our deck to the graveyard. Monster we're going to send from our deck to the graveyard is going to go ahead and be the Water Enchantress, putting that into the graveyard there. We're then going to go ahead and banish the Water Enchantress, which will allow us to add Rite of Armisia from our deck to our hand. And then we're going to go ahead and use Rite, summoning the Brave token in defense mode. We'll go ahead and then use Fateful Adventure, activating it, and then declare its effect, which will allow us to add 1 adventure card from our deck to our hand. We'll add the Griffin Rider, of course, just to get that Omni Negate. And then we'll send from our hand to the graveyard the Fog Blade. Now, we're going to go ahead and special summon out the Griffin Rider, and we're going to go ahead and use the Ancient Cloak in our graveyard, which will allow us to add a Phantom Knight of Stained Grief from our deck to our hand. There we are. I should have also used the Faithful Adventure by now, but it's fine because we'll trigger it after this. Okay. We'll go ahead and banish the Fog Blade to special summon the Boots. And then we'll trigger the Fateful Adventure and the Stained Greaves, basically also playing around Ash a bit there if you really want to know. And we'll go ahead and add the Dracoback Rider from our deck to our hand. Okay. What we're gonna do next is... we're gonna go ahead and overlay these two. And we're gonna summon out the Levianeer, the Sea Dragon. And guys, I do know that right now I have made a little bit of a misplay here in this combo. If you guys can tell me where it is, that would be great. I know where it is, and I will say it. But before in the comments that you say it, I say it, go say there if you want to. But pretty much the misplay that I made is that I could have gone ahead and just banished the Cloak. And instead of adding the Greaves, I could have got a Torn Scale. And I could have got the Torn Scale, then used the Fateful Adventure, and gone ahead and send the Torn Scale to the graveyard. So then I could banish the Boots to go ahead and then just send to graveyard another card, and then I'll have a lot more resources right now. But I'm doing it in a different way because I want to show you, even though we don't do that, we still have a lot of resources and a lot of plays. So yeah, we're going to go ahead now and use the Levianeer there anyway, and we're going to go ahead and detach, summoning out the Ancient Cloak. We're then going to link the Ancient Cloak and the Cherubini, summoning out the Rusty Bardiche. And then we'll use the Rusty Bardiche's effect, which will allow us to send one card from our deck to the graveyard or one Phantom Knights monster and set a Phantom Knight spell or trap. The card we're going to send is the Torn Scales, and then we're going to set a Fog Blade. Alright, so we've got those in the graveyard now. What we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and banish the Boots from our graveyard to allow us to add a spell or trap from our deck to our hand. The one we're going to add is going to be the Fog Blade. And then we're going to go ahead and trigger the Torn Scale in our graveyard, summoning it in defense. We're then going to use the Torn Scale's effect, which will allow us to discard our Dracoback Rider, allowing me to send a Phantom Knight Wings from our deck to the graveyard. Like so. And then what we do is we go ahead and banish the Wings, and we should have had the Draco back on this. I'll just put it there for the end board, to go ahead and summon out the Ancient Cloak in attack mode, and then we'll use the Ancient Cloak's effect turning in defense to boost the Rusty Bardiche. And then we're going to overlay these two, summoning out literally any rank 3 monster you could possibly want here. You could literally summon back anything, but we're going to just go ahead and summon for the video a Dante. Because when we get to the Seer, it means that we can start Dante Seer looping, which is really good. And then we're going to go ahead and just overlay these two. Like so. Go into the Utopic Future, go into the Utopic Future Draco. And then we'll set the Fog Blade. And yeah, pretty much this board is slightly weaker because of the choices I made to go down, because we could have ended on a lot better board if we chose a different route, where if we just banished the Cloak, then got ahead and discarded it with the Fateful Adventure, would have been a lot better. But because we probably had the Wings in the graveyard still and stuff like that. But nonetheless, this board is still very, very strong for the fact that you've still got the Omni Negate, you've still got the 2 Fog Blades, you've still got the Utopic Future, and you've got an Ash Blossom in hand as well, which is absolutely insane. So pretty much this board is very much the same. All it's missing is the pop from the Rusty Bardiche to revive, but nonetheless, even though it's missing that, it's actually got a few things better as well, in the fact that you've got the Ancient Cloak in graveyard, which will allow you to go ahead and search next turn. You've got the Torn Scale in the graveyard still, so you've got the ability to summon it back. You've got the 2 Fog Blades that are still Monster Reborns. Like, honestly, this field, even though it is a misplay field technically because we didn't end on the additional pop, this field is still really, really insane. But guys, I just want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this now, because I've shown you the hands, I've shown you the routes, the different things you can do with the deck, I've shown you the end board. Like, every end board is pretty much virtually the same. This one is just slightly different because it doesn't have the redoer / the pop, but I would just like to hear your thoughts and opinions on this deck. Do you think this deck is a much better variant than the Scythe DPE variant? Do you think you would play this over that variant? Do you think you would rather play the Scythe DPE variant? I personally am going to probably stick with this build because I don't like the fact that it just adds a lot more bricks into the deck, where the fact that you could just draw the Dasher, you could draw the Celestial, you could draw the Scythe, you could draw things that don't help you and just make your combos a lot less consistent, and I prefer a much more consistent build when playing a deck like this. But Guys, that is all I actually have to say for this video now. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, tell me your thoughts in the comments section below, and I will see you guys in the next one. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Robot1 signing out, and later all.